Phil, did I see you at church or something?
Yeah, I
thought I saw you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But I didn't actually. Once I got here and got up to the stage, I actually looked around for you. I was like, "Where's Bill?" And for once, I didn't see you out there. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great. I loved how you handled the timeline.
Yeah, pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Well, let's welcome everyone. Welcome. For those of you that don't know, my name is Jeff Pascal, pastor of this church. We like to remember or remind people this is not a church meeting. We are a meeting of citizens. This is the Douglas County Citizens Coalition, and maybe you're here for the first time and you don't know much about us. I hope you learn a little bit. And after we do our prayer and pledge, we're gonna just talk briefly. And tonight's agenda is going to be very quick. Hey, one thing I'm going to ask Sylvia to do, back on the keyboard on the left computer over there, there's a volume for the music. You need to try to turn it off. And if you don't, I can. Oh, you did it? You're awesome. And she's so good. Everybody clap for Sylvia. All right. She's so good. All right. Let's pray, and then we'll stand and do the pledge. Father in heaven, I want to thank you for this time. We're gathering here tonight. It's a privilege for us to be alive. For you are the creator. You're the designer of all life. And we want to thank you, recognize you, and praise you. Lord, tonight we just pray blessing for this meeting we have. And we're just praying that the skies of freedom open up to people. And we ask your blessing on this nation and our world right now. And we pray that your sovereign hand continues to move things as we know that you are. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Why don't we stand up together? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, Douglas County Citizens Coalition is a group of people. It's a group of citizens. And about August last year, I mean, we all saw it well before August that the walls of freedom were closing in on us. And so really that's what happened as a group, as a result of all of our freedoms being stripped away, not just through COVID. We saw it being stripped away before COVID. But when that happened and all of a sudden everyone was threatened to lose their jobs come October, and this group came out of nowhere and started forming, and people started gathering, and that's really what this is about. It's just a citizens movement. And here's our vision. It's Douglas County Citizens Coalition is dedicated to peacefully working together to protect our freedoms. That's key. We are going to protect our freedoms. And we love to do it peaceably if we can. If we can. There is a Second Amendment just in case we can't. But we want to work and here's how we want to be. Our freedoms, we want to do it by taking intelligent action. We are about action, what we can do together, and the bigger, the better, the larger we citizens are, the more actions we can take, and the more support we can create, and so on. So intelligent action, offering real solutions to those in power. We love this phrase, to those in power, because that's how our country works. And we want to, if they don't really want to listen to those of us who want to offer the people's support, we want to try to find people who will listen. Right? So we want to offer solutions to those in power, standing with each other when needed. And we've been doing all kinds of creative groups for like preventative, problems, like if there's emergencies, what do we do? And using the Constitution and its supporting laws as our indisputable platform. So that's who we are. Tonight's agenda is going to be very quick. We're going to try to get through about 5 or 6 bullet items, literally just get her out of the way in 15 minutes. And then we got a special guest tonight. It's Sheriff John Hanlon. We're so excited he's here. And we've got to just offer an opportunity for him to share what it's like being a sheriff. And I hope you love this county because we love him. And so I love law and order. And the more people in this county that love law and order and love our sheriff, the better, in my opinion. So we're so excited that you're here tonight. And so can't wait to just talk and let you talk. And it's probably important to know that this is being live broadcast, just to let you know. So, just like anybody in power, he's got enemies too. But just let you know, he's not a man afraid to be courageous and stand in the gap and do what's right and stand up for right. And that's why we love you. So, in any case, let me just go ahead and turn it over. You ready? Okay. Or do I have something that I need to share? Okay.
Caught up in what you're saying.
Oh, my.
So, actually, a couple other little things I think maybe we're supposed to mention is, well, do you want to put up our contact stuff again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, first of all, we've never really asked for donations before, though people have generously given them. And last time we did kind of mention that people had talked about a printer and offered money specifically for a printer. So with the donations for a printer, Coalition has a printer now. So thank you for everyone who donated. So we have a way to print off our letters and stuff like that. So thank you guys very much. On a way that we can, I guess we're not really fundraising, but if you do feel like you want to do something for Coalition and get something out of it, some of us have these cool sweatshirts, t-shirts. You can get them off of our website, which is right on there. And try to keep in mind our website is under construction, but we are in a process of trying to come up with a way to get information out to people that is not as overwhelming as Telegram can be. So we're working on a calendar. We're in the process. We're all regular people. We're all regular people. Anyways, with busy lives, and so this is everybody just when they can and have time to get things done. But those shirts are for sale through the website and sweatshirts. All my kids got them for Christmas, and they love to wear them to school because it's the way they can express themselves. Anyways, moving on from that. Just a little reminder, we have canvassing meeting tonight after main coalition meeting is over. We're going to kind of firm up our plans for this weekend. Is Doug here? We have somebody who is coalition kind of follower person who is involved, who has decided to do some sign-ups to go to the gas stations to get people registered to vote. So I know that there was a link on the Telegram page for signing up. So if you are on the Telegram channel, you can go to the main coalition, which is much less cluttered, much less stuff. And that action item page will have the link for sign up for the gas stations and the dates. You do not have to be a PCP. Anybody can go and just take a clipboard and help get people registered to vote. And that's important because some people are registered as, in Douglas County, we have over 16,000 Democrats, 32,000 Republican registered voters, 30,000 non-affiliated voters. And who can blame them, right? I mean, we're all disenchanted with some stuff. But the thing is we need those non-affiliated voters for the primaries because we're in the last, I don't know how many years since we've been a blue party thanks to mail-in ballots, we're having a pretty important race for the governor. So we need those non-affiliated voters. So anyways, what better place right now besides maybe a grocery store than the gas pumps to get people registered to vote? Some people don't even realize maybe they're non-affiliated because they got signed up at the DMV. So check that on the News in Action. If you don't have Telegram, you're not sure how to get signed up, see Sheila. Raise your hand, Sheila. Thank you. Okay. Next item. We've talked about the PCPs, precinct committee people, a lot. Last meeting we had, we were trying to encourage people to get their names on the ballot for precinct committee person. So now there is, for those who are already PCP people, there is a meeting coming up this Thursday for voting for the new Republican Party chairman, because there's an interim one since the previous one stepped down. So if you're a precinct committee person already, not if you've just put your name on the ballot, but if you're an already current precinct committee person, please plan to attend this meeting on Thursday at the OSU Extension office upstairs. It starts at 5:30 for the vetting. So at the last coalition, I mentioned a few things from my own experiences at the Republican Party headquarters. I would encourage you to go, and I would encourage you to hope that a person who is nominated that you choose to vote for is someone who is Team America. Team, unite some people together and put some differences aside, and Team Douglas County, Team America, because if you're not careful, you might vote for somebody who is team a small group of country club people who were not for the bigger picture. So really be a part of the process because all the votes are important, and be a part of something that affects a positive change, because we have some things to work out there. I'm going to leave it at that for now because we're going to try to keep it shorter. Jeff, we're up to you now. Relay. Back and forth, back and forth.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm just wanting to touch on this one here, Notes on Election Integrity and Protect Our Democracy, agenda released by Shemaiah Fagan. Does anybody know about this? She's our Secretary of State. So in January, in the end of January this year, she put out a publication, and it was basically regarding election integrity from, believe it or not, the supermajority left-wing Democrat side, how they describe election integrity. That's what this publication is. You know what? I got to stop and just say, I'm not going to take long, I promise. So, but I have to blame it on somebody. No, but I always wondered, what in the world are people of Oregon voting on, and how in the world are people that are just so far left-wing able to govern so unbelievably, like, off the charts, removing people's freedoms and raping people and just all the things? How could they continue to govern this way and keep getting reelected? I mean, how is that possible? And so at first, there's two things that come to my mind as just a normal common sense person. A, the elections lack integrity, okay? And just letting you know, if you are citizens and you have no questions and you're one of those people that says, I think that the mail-in balloting that was instituted in Oregon for the first state in the nation and the way it's run, that there are no election problems in our state, I'm praying that you come and wake up. I pray that you do. And actually, there's a Citizens Coalition. We're a part of vetting candidates that we want to be running for the Republican County. And let me tell you something. If you're a candidate and you hold no suspicion for our election integrity in this country, we are not going to support you. And we're going to try and find as many people to not support you as a politician as well. Because I think that every person who holds office, even in our Douglas County local office, if you hold zero suspicion for things, I'm not saying you know what's going wrong or there's evidence and you have it. I'm just thinking a politician should hold suspicion for integrity of elections, and that's just what we believe. So other than that, just briefly, this letter, it describes how they're describing election integrity, and here's just a couple things. Last year, 19 states passed laws that will make it harder for eligible voters. We all know what that is to a Democrat, right? An eligible voter? Right. If you breathe, that Mexicans actually need ID to vote unless they cross the border illegally. They can come vote in our country. So then they're an eligible voter. So these states passed laws for eligible voters not to cast ballot, and moreover, in 2022, more are. And this is, meanwhile, legislators in Georgia and elsewhere have passed laws that give partisan officials the ability to meddle in elections administration. So once the election happens, and if there's someone that wants to throw a spotlight on the integrity of that election, they're offended that some states are passing laws that allow partisan people, they say, to go ahead and say, hey, wait a second, can we verify this election? They want to end that. So anyway, that's what this is about, and we really want to put this in your hands. I think I can make copies of it with our brand new printer and let you look at it because you need to look at it. You need to read it through. Yeah, any questions, Kathy?
Well, even the fact that it's calling it a democracy because we're a republic. It's
right.
Not a democracy. So right there.
No. And let me finish my thought. I started by saying there are two reasons why I think that our governing people can govern so badly and keep winning. One is election integrity. You know what the other one is I believe they will continue not only to govern badly, but even worse because they know they will never lose. They know something about the system that's now rigged in a way that they cannot lose. Therefore, if a governing person continues to govern, knowing they can never lose, guess the way they'll govern? Either the way they want to or the way someone is controlling them to. So this is a scary time. So yeah, that's why we're dealing with this. So this is for you guys. We're going to print it, and Sheila's coming up now. Oh, Sheila's Sheila, come on up here. No, just kidding. Yeah, Joanne? I have to give you further notice. I don't have an action step for this. Anybody have an action step for how we stand against our Secretary of State? Yeah? Personally, the thing you can do in action right now is to get out and stand at gas stations and register voters. You register. We need to overwhelm the voting so they cannot rig this thing and they lose. And once they lose, wow, what a thing. Yeah.
You need people at your actual voting booths to make sure that the Dominion machines that they're going to use,
Yep.
that they are not Wi-Fi connected. They were Wi-Fi connected,
Yep.
which right there proves that they cheated.
It just needs to be uncovered.
That's going to be at the booths. Not just
We need to fill the PCP roles. We need to do everything we can. Yeah. We don't vote at booths, yeah.
From my understanding, Oregon doesn't use Dominion.
No. I will. So Cherie is trying to just see, I came from California, so right away I was thinking, that's exactly right. We need to do that. And then, of course, 7 years. So in Oregon, we don't have booths and we don't use Dominion, but they've found a way to do it. Yeah.
What he's referencing, though, I will say, everybody has an opportunity to do this, to be he's talking about poll watching. What you can do is be a participant in what's called an election observer.
Election observers.
Douglas County Clerk will share information on that. They have some opportunities for people to volunteer and also be employed to do this. So
We also want to hold our clerk to a few questions that he has to continue to answer.
yeah, well, and I've encouraged him to do. I don't want to take up too much time, but I've just encouraged him to do tours, community tours, to share information on how the process works.
Right.
And I think that they're going to do that, but I don't have dates yet.
Right now, there's an unanswered question about post offices that don't have post markings, and apparently those post offices, which there's a large number of them, they can't actually verify because they don't have a stamp that goes in and punches it for the date, and literally they extend the voting for that reason, so that people can turn in piles of ballots after the deadline, and that's the actual loophole that's being used. And I want to have someone who at least holds suspicion for that. Is possible for that to be a loophole for a lack of integrity. I'd rather if someone say, well, we've got that taken care of, there's no integrity. I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, I'm voting for someone else. So anyway, that's the way. Anyone else? Are we done? Huh? Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Yes. Well, I mean, I guess it would depend because, I mean, the ballots are mailed out quite a bit before the election day. So it would depend. You would have to have.
Can we as a Citizens Coalition raise enough money to buy a stamp machine for every post office in Oregon?
I don't know. We will work on some of the action items that could apply to that handout that Sheila's making copies of.
Sheila has a list of every post office that doesn't have a stamp.
I worked in a sub post office station years and years ago, and it's a special government issued stamp. They have to change the date every single day and all that kind of stuff. That's the way it used to be. I guess these post offices don't have an automated one, but even if we had one person watching and stamping whenever they come in, I don't know, are people in the community, maybe the community itself is oblivious as to what's going to take place at their post office.
I don't know. I think it'd be just as easy to change it back to in person and precinct by precinct voting on paper. But anyways, did you have a question? Right. There's definitely, yeah, more than one problem. Okay, so I'm going to try to get back. We'll keep this going for the next in-person meeting, but because we do have John, we want to get kind of moving on this. But on the topic of candidates, one last little action item is that we have somebody who has started a database on the candidates, the governor candidates, for factual information, not just, well, somebody said they saw so and such doing this over there and that's really bad, but actually factual stuff, right? We need voting records, things like this. So Kiana has already started a database, and Janae has offered to help also, but it would be great the more people who are willing to help, like start digging into candidates, so we could have something, because there's so much stuff out there all over everywhere, right? With social media, it's good and bad, double-edged sword. So if anyone is willing, please see Kiana, raise your hand. When we're done, please see Kiana, and please, please consider this as something that you could do from home, from your computer, from your phone, those sorts of things. It's not necessarily a lot of out and about, but this is something that would be very helpful, because some people are not able to do this research, but it's really important, right? Because we have a big election coming up, and it's really important to get as many people registered to vote, as many people turning out to vote, and as many people getting right behind the right candidates. And getting behind the right candidates is getting the information available on those candidates and getting that out. So, I mean, you can go to forums, but in my opinion, they're gonna have a pre-planned speech and pre-pat answers at these forums. So if anybody's interested in doing a little digging and looking into some stuff, please work with Kiana and Janae. And the more people we have helping, maybe you could get one candidate per person, two, something like that, would be great. And then we could help share the results of that through Coalition and with other counties. Because I think people forget that some of us are kind of dialed in on social media. We have the Facebook, we have the Instagram, we have the Telegram, all the grams. We have the ability now to reach out to people all across the state that we didn't have before and communicate with so many more people who are feeling the same way that we do. Now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, I would love to introduce Olga and John Hanlon to come up here. Do we have chairs or just the stools? So we would like for you guys, if you haven't yet, if you have any questions that you'd like, oh, you have another chair. If you have any questions, we have note cards that Sheila and Sylvia will be passing around or have, and we will collect them. And then Olga will be asking. We would like to kind of keep this kind of an on-track thing. So if you have questions already in mind, write them down. We'll get them turned in. And I want to tell you guys a little something about John. One of our first coalition activities was when we got together, going in and storming John's office, where we asked him about where he stood with the Constitution and stuff like that. And he gave us a little pre-spoiler alert of his letter that he had prepared for the governor's office. But anyways, at that point I was like, he's our modern day John Wayne. Well, I don't know if any of you have seen any of the documentary that I think Matt Hill, DTO, put together for the Archie Creek fires. But I was meeting with a local guy last week who's part of Search and Rescue, and we were talking about, we got onto the Archie Creek fire business, and he, as one of the head guys at Search and Rescue, was telling me a story about how he had gone up the river. It was really, really bad, fire on both sides, boulders popping off of the banks, trees falling down everywhere, everything on fire. And as he's going up the highway, a car comes out and stops him, and she's like, this woman jumps out, and she says, my husband's in the house, can't get him out, please come help. This guy and his partner, they head up this hill, and in Glide, everything's on a mountain, switchbacks, and he gets part way, and he's like, there's too much fire, there's no way we're gonna make it. So his only idea is, let's go down, block the traffic, wait for a fire truck to come up, stop him, get him to go up ahead of us. Well, the next truck up, or vehicle, was John. And this guy's like, can't get up there. The gal's already back up there, but we can't make it up there, the fire's too bad. And John hits the gas and goes, and takes Tim Freeman hostage. I mean, maybe Tim wanted to go, I don't know. Can you imagine, though, being the commissioner being like, can you just let me out down here on the highway? Or do you just ride along and hope for the best? And the next rig up was the next undersheriff, and they went too. And then the fire truck came up, and the fire truck went to make it up. And even the fire truck was like, no, man, we're not going to make it. So your sheriff did that. And then at the next roadblock, when the search and rescue guy was sent up to Steamboat, the guy said, no, you're not going to make it up there. It's too dangerous. You're not going to make it. You couldn't go. So they said, all right. Next rig up was John and Tim, and there they went. And then they had to take the back way out. But anyways, that's our modern day John Wayne. right here.
Thank you. Actually, so what really happened was I had 8 years of experience working for DFPA prior to coming to work for the sheriff's office. And so I have just enough fire behavior experience to be dangerous. And I decided we needed to get that guy out of there. The other thing was I did have a county commissioner with me, and I had a budget that I was trying to get passed. And so I had to prove a point. So, folks, I want to apologize. I normally prepare a little better before I come speak to a group like you all. And I was approached a couple of weeks ago by Olga and some others. And I'll be honest, I didn't do my homework, so I'm going to just shoot from the hip up here.
Well, this was intentional, so.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. You know, somebody said, well, you have nothing to fear with this group. And you're right, I really don't. I mean, I've gone nose to nose with the mainstream media or the fake news on a number of occasions, and so this group doesn't scare me. And then I got in here and I got looking around and I realized, being a local homegrown guy like I am, I see a lot of faces that I recognize that knew me before I became a police officer, so I'm back to being scared again. At any rate, I was asked to speak about what it means to be a constitutional sheriff. And I'll just tell you this, that I think we are so fortunate here in Douglas County. There's a lot of good counties in this state, and somebody mentioned earlier about me coming back. You hoped I loved Douglas County, and I do, or I wouldn't be here in this position. I had an opportunity to live and stay in Deschutes County, which I will tell you is almost as beautiful as this county is. Some may say it's more beautiful. But right out of college from there, I decided to come back home, and I've been here ever since. And I do love this county, and it means everything to me. What I was starting to get at is the constitutionality aspect of being sheriff here. It's easy to do in this community and in this county, and I think it's pretty easy to do in all of the counties in this state. The other 35 sheriffs that share the office of sheriff with me in their respective counties, I am confident that at least 34 of them are constitutional sheriffs, and they support and defend the Constitution and would do so with their own blood. You probably wonder why I'm only counting 35 of us and where the 36th one is, and I think we can all guess. Multnomah County, and that sheriff up there, I don't believe that he isn't constitutional. I just feel that he has to keep his mouth shut and keep his thoughts and beliefs somewhat to himself. Otherwise, he would find himself unelected really quick. But I am confident that the other 34 are much like we are here in Douglas County. And I think the state is fortunate to have that. And the reason I think it's that way is because, for those of you that don't know, the sheriff is the only law enforcement administrator throughout the land that is elected. Every other chief of police, the superintendent of the Oregon State Police or of any state police agencies across the country, they're all appointed. And of course, as we know, the law enforcement administrators for the federal government, like the FBI and the DEA and those agencies, are all appointed by cabinet members or by the President of the United States. So I think by simply being elected officials, that makes us more accountable to you, and we recognize what your values are, and so we tend to lead knowing what those values are. Real quick, there was some comments made about the election process and feeling that some of our election outcomes appeared to be unfair, and I will agree that there were some, in some states, that there was no doubt in my mind there was some weirdness going on. But I have 100% confidence in our local county clerk. You know, there was fear that there was going to be some things happening in this last election, and I had lots of conversations with our county clerk about it. And I'd like to give our county clerk, Dan Loomis, an opportunity to address some of those issues that were brought up earlier, if he would, just to clarify some of the questions that were brought up.
Just real quick, if you have any questions about the elections process, please visit us, call us, email us. We're ready to answer those questions. I'm ready to walk you through the elections department, show you the machinery, show you that it's not connected to the internet, has no Wi-Fi connections. Just make sure that you give us the opportunity to answer your questions. Earlier, I had heard a lot of assumptions about the election process, which may lead you down a path of no value added. I think getting information directly from elections official would be very beneficial to you all, and just please do. Thank you.
So, looks like some questions were turned in, and one of them here is, what is your duty to the citizens of Douglas County as our constitutional sheriff? Most importantly, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution requires each public official to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. What is it that you do to keep this oath? So, my duty to the citizens of Douglas County as a constitutional sheriff is just that. It's to defend and uphold the Constitution and the laws thereof, the Constitution of the state of Oregon and the laws thereof, so help me God. And that is essentially the oath that I took, well, ever since I became a police officer, but it really didn't sink in until I took that oath as sheriff. You know, when you become a police officer, you're so gung-ho and eager to go out and enforce law and take bad guys to jail that some of the formalities that you go through and that you learn in the academy don't really don't mean as much to you. Maybe you don't think about it. You're more worried about the process in putting handcuffs on somebody and the paperwork you have to fill out and all those technical things. But the philosophical stuff that really matters, why you're doing what you're doing, really comes to light and becomes clear when you take that oath. The second part of that question being, most importantly, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution requires each public official to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. And that is true. So every one of my police officers, when they start their first day with the sheriff's office, we have a swearing-in ceremony. I bring them up in front of the staff, and there's usually, you know, a commissioner or two there, and you know, maybe the DA and others, and I make them raise their right hand, and they take the same oath of office that I take, except it's not an oath as sheriff; it's as a deputy sheriff. But you get the point. They take the same oath, and then throughout their career, especially in the sheriff's office, my command staff reminds them that oath is more than just a swearing-in oath, more than just something they did to start their first day. It's got to mean something to them. And so we get them thinking about that. And we do annual training, and we always implement something into the annual training that reminds them that their loyalty and obedience and their oath to the Constitution is always present.
All right, so one of the questions is, will you give us some examples of some of the things you have to fight for here in Douglas County under an overreaching unconstitutional governor and legislators?
Well, so this last year's been a doozy. Obviously, you know, with the COVID outbreak and the mandates that the governor has implemented, that has been, there's been a number of conflicts arise from that. My position on it has always been that mandates aren't laws, and that we aren't going to enforce the governor's mandates. We will enforce state laws and support and defend people's constitutional rights. But certainly these mandates that the governor required don't fall under laws that we are required to enforce. You probably remember you probably remember there was a restaurant here in town that got investigated by OSHA. Yeah, and they got sanctioned by OSHA. And on the day that all started to transpire, I had a conversation with the police chief, and I suggested to him that he not get involved in that, or if he did get involved, that his involvement involved backing the owner of that business and suggesting that OSHA go home, go back to Eugene. It didn't work out that way. In fact, I think he actually was the one that drafted the report and submitted the report to OSHA following a complaint that somebody had made that they were not requiring people wear masks. He then got support from, I think, the city council, which was somewhat frustrating. But again, you know, that was a city matter. It was inside the city limits. I said early on that I wasn't going to step on toes and step in front of the chief of police and try to take over and you know, push back against OSHA within the city. Initially, I said that. Later on, I made a couple of other businesses promises that if OSHA did pay visits, that I would come if they called me, knowing that it may not make any difference. All I can really do is show up and show support for the business and suggest that OSHA is wasting their time here, but they're going to do what they're going to do.
So this next question kind of ties into this. If an agency of the federal government were violating the rights of a citizen in our county, what can you do? If federal government was violating the rights of a citizen of our county, or state for that matter?
So I mean, there's a simple answer to that for me. If the federal government comes into this county and is violating people's constitutional rights, no matter what degree or what type of violation that is, they're going to know who I am. I'm going to step in and I'm going to suggest that they leave, or at least they better convince me that their actions are just.
So John, if the FBI comes to get me for being in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, we'll just call you first.
Okay.
So the question is, if our local insurrectionist gets
Were you there?
a visit from the FBI, if John will come rescue her, yes?
You just plead the fifth right now. Certainly. I got brand new hearing aids and I feel like I'm screaming at myself.
All right. So next question is, what can we as citizens here in Douglas County do to assure our inalienable rights are protected and secure? What is our duty as citizens as you see it?
I think your duties, and I think in order to protect your inalienable rights falls within this next statement, is understand what your rights are. I know a lot of you have seen the little pocket constitution. You've probably studied it. I would encourage you to read that and have a basic understanding of what your constitutional rights are. The thing about the Constitution is that it is forever and always in conflict with state laws. They tend to clash at times. And so becoming an expert in the Constitution or in state law is a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And I think you probably would agree with that. But we have a process for working through those times when there's a clash between our constitutional rights and state law. And we have to trust, though I understand why there is mistrust, but we really need to trust the system to work out those differences. The way we improve our trust, I think, is we make sure that we are putting the right people into office, especially at the state level and in Congress. And we have lost track and lost sight of that in recent years. We've got to get that back. We've got to put people back in positions that matter. You know, I was having a conversation earlier today about our lack of ability to care for the community in regards to homelessness and in regards to people that are high on drugs and a nuisance on society. And if you remember, so here a year ago, the state legislature we passed a law. I shouldn't necessarily blame it on the state legislature. It was out, for the people to vote, but we passed a law that decriminalized the possession of street drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, dangerous street level drugs. And as a result of that, we're seeing a lot more homelessness. We're seeing a lot more addiction. We're seeing a lot more violent crime. The reason that happened wasn't necessarily because, the reason it happened was because the law, when it was put before us, wasn't put before us clearly. I believe that the majority of us believed that the law that was being changed was to improve drug addiction and provide more facilities for people that have drug addiction. We were sold a bill of goods that included helping these poor people get off their drug addiction, which we haven't seen any improvement in that. But in the fine print in the bill was the fact that they were going to take possession of those drugs that I just mentioned and make them violations. And that has been detrimental to our society, and it's going to continue to be that way until that gets reversed.
All right, what happens if or when Sheriff's Department funding is cut and or roles are rewritten? I think we've talked about it before.
When the Sheriff's Office budget gets cut, then I load up all 3 commissioners in my truck and I go out to another forest fire. No, I will say this. This group of county commissioners, and I know you don't all necessarily support all 3 of them, but I will tell you that this group of county commissioners that we currently have is the most supportive of public safety and making public safety a priority than any other 3 commissioners we've ever had since I've been in the sheriff's office. And I mean that. We've had 1 or 2 that were always very supportive, but to have all 3 in full support and wanting to make public safety the priority is rare.
Can I ask a question, John?
Yes.
In regard to public safety, I live in Tiller, and as most of us know, the forest fires that are starting by lightning strikes, a lot of them are not put out immediately. There's a huge public safety issue that we've talked about. What is it that you can do to address that public safety issue with the commissioners? Because I'll tell you, from what I'm seeing, not much is being done in that area.
Okay, so I think what you're talking about was you're talking about the fire breaks and taking some action to put in fire breaks.
Yeah, pressure on the
Pressure.
federal government, and we live out in federal forests.
Right.
We can't do anything ourselves, but we are members of Douglas County. So there's a huge public safety issue that the way they're managing this forest puts us directly in threat.
Right. So I can tell you that Commissioner Freeman, who is the commissioner responsible for the timber issues and has relationships with the Forest Service and the BLM, has heated conversations with them regularly about things that need to be done on the federal timberland. But we're dealing with federal agencies that don't want to listen. You know, they've all got their college degrees. They all come from other parts of the country and get placed here in Douglas County where they don't really know and understand our forest like we understand it. And getting movement out of them and getting cooperation out of them sometimes is very, very difficult. And even during an event, you know, even when we're actively fighting fire and trying to save homes and property and lives, we sometimes have resistance from them. So to try to do it in advance, you know, in a preventative time is even more difficult.
Nothing you can do. As a
I,
sheriff.
is what? Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I've sat in on conversations with the district supervisor of the Forest Service and made suggestions. They don't necessarily like that model of scarring up the countryside with these fire breaks. In fact, they don't even like to scar them up while the fire's burning. It takes a lot of pressure, you know, to be placed on them to get them to agree to let firefighters put a bulldozer down on federal land and disrupt the soil. These are all, you know, these I think are all issues that need to be changed at the federal level. They need, you know, the Department of Agriculture and Department of the Interior need administrators in there that are willing to work with the local land ownerships and form an understanding of what our forest is like, not what they think it's like sitting in behind a desk in Washington, D.C.
It just doesn't feel like the public safety issue is a leading issue. I mean, it's
Well,
like behind the environmental issue, half of which is imaginary anyways, if you want to know the truth.
Sure.
As a firefighter, I fight fire.
Yeah.
But this private land that's within the federal forest, that's your responsibility to protect and make it safe, right?
Right. But, I mean, ultimately, the entire county is my responsibility.
But that's private land, that's county land, and that's your jurisdiction.
Yeah, but he's talking about federal land.
Yeah, but he's living within the federal land. Correct.
Yeah.
I got one more hard question for you. The cartels are moving in.
Yes, they are. They're here.
And we are worried. We do not believe that the law in Douglas County is doing what it needs to do to protect us from what we know are dangerous people up the South River.
And that was actually the next question on here too. If you have any plan or hope for stopping the crazy drug traffic and increase here?
Okay. So this all started with the cartels about 20 years ago. And back then, because we didn't yet have legal marijuana, they were growing large-scale grows out in the forest, hidden on Forest Service lands and, you know, out in the forest land. And we hit them hard in Douglas County. We had money set aside for a helicopter. And in fact, I was the one in the helicopter every summer for about 15 years out looking for marijuana grows. We had a very active drug team that didn't just eradicate these grows, but we actually investigated them and tried to determine who was responsible for them. And the way we did that was we installed surveillance cameras, and sometimes we sat them, you know, and waited for the bad guys to come in. And we made a lot of arrests, and we pushed the cartel grows, for the most part, out of the woods. You know, they came up from Northern California, and they infiltrated, you know, Southwest Oregon, including us, and north of us some. And we did a pretty good job of pushing back. And then they passed medical marijuana, which, quite frankly, I think that kind of ticked off the cartels. And now we have an issue with hemp. And what the cartel is doing is they're coming in, they know from past experience that if they overwhelm us, they know we only have so much resources. They know that if they can overwhelm us with grows, whether they be out in the woods or they be fields of hemp, that we will only be able to investigate and seize or eradicate a certain percentage of it. And whatever's left over is money in their pocket, big money in their pocket, especially now when you're talking hemp. And so that's what they're doing. They're leasing land, they're buying land, and they're growing acres and acres of hemp that isn't hemp, it's marijuana. And we've been dealing with that now for the last about 3 years. And it started in Josephine and Jackson County, and it's moved up into Douglas County. This year, after last year, we raided as many of those illegal hemp grows that we could. Majority of them were illegals from Mexico and cartel grows. We raided probably a dozen of them, which just barely scratched the surface, I recognize. But we picked out the largest ones that we knew of, and we investigated and raided those. Knowing that it's only going to get worse, the county commissioners have approached me and wanted to know what I need. What do we need to stop this? And so they are giving me an extra $1.5 million this year to put together a marijuana eradication team. It'll be a team of about 5 guys with a bunch of equipment, and they'll be joined at the hip with the Douglas Interagency Narcotics team. And they've already got 30 or 40 packets of grows that they are expecting will pop up here in the next couple of months, and they're going to hit it hard. And we're going to seize everything that we can possibly seize. We're going to hit them where it hurts. The difficult thing with this is because of the laws that we currently have, we can't send anybody hardly anymore to prison for growing marijuana, even if it's 20 acres of it. With the changes in the laws that I was talking about earlier, it makes it almost impossible to send anybody to prison. So we all know, and we learned this years ago, that it isn't necessarily sending somebody to prison that makes them stop. It's hitting them in the pocketbook. And so we're going to seize as much as we can. We're going to seize their properties. We're going to seize their equipment that they buy. And we're just going to make it as painful as we can to the cartel checkbook, if you will, and hopefully push them out of here.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right, so the next question is, if there is a widespread civil unrest, like in Portland or Kenosha, how can we support the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, you personally, and other plans or options in place for militia?
So, God help us. Help us. I hope that we never get to that point. And I can't even wrap my mind around exactly what that would look like if we have that kind of civil unrest. I know this much, and we talked about this when Portland was burning down. That crap isn't going to happen here. We're not going to let that happen here. As far as forming a militia, you know, I thought about this when my first election, and I was going through some of the different things that a sheriff has to do and learn, and you know, one of those things was get a good understanding of the concealed handgun license process, and how I wanted to figure out how I could make that as easy as possible for people to get their concealed handgun license and still stay within the bounds of the law. And I was thinking, you know, what better opportunity to draft, if you will, people from that group of individuals and ask them or put them on a list to form a militia. So as people were coming in to renew their license or to get their first license ever, I would hand out a form that asked if they wanted to be considered as part of the sheriff's posse. And if they did, then they marked the box, and so I keep that list of people in a file. Some people found out, you know, about that possibility, but didn't necessarily want a concealed handgun license, so I let them, you know, fill one out as well. The whole purpose behind using the concealed handgun license process was, if you come in and you get a concealed handgun license, we end up running a background check on you, and if you're basically cleared from any felony arrest. So if you don't have any felony arrests, you can get your concealed handgun license, and I feel you're a law-abiding citizen, and I want you on my posse list.
Thank you, Sheriff. And I'm sorry, some questions are a little bit out of order, but are you on the same page as the commissioners? And where are you in agreement, and where do you have concerns?
On the same page as
the commissioners.
Regarding what?
Regarding everything. Any concerns? I guess this is, give us some dirt, Sheriff.
So I'm not sure that I'm done running yet, so I'm not.
Who asked this question?
I'm not going to lie. I have disagreements with the commissioners fairly regularly. I think that's what's healthy about local government and elected officials. You have to be able to disagree. And sometimes I convince them that my reasoning and line of thinking is a better way to see it, and sometimes they convince me that their way is. But there's really not anything earth-shattering that we disagree on that causes me concern. If that answers the question.
Did you ask the question?
That's a good point. That wasn't in the form of a question, more of a statement, right?
Well, the question would be, how can we support you, right? What can we do as citizens to back you up and to back up Freeman when he's facing off the feds?
You know, I think one simple little thing that I think that a group like you guys could do that means a lot and is very empowering and shows a tremendous amount of support for your elected officials is to once in a while drop into a weekly meeting, and certainly if you have a question or criticism about a decision or something, bring that up. But also, once in a while, go in there and pat them on the back or say something positive, because I can tell you that those meetings every week, it's very rare to hear citizens come in and give kudos to their elected officials. It just doesn't happen that often, and it means a lot. Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, yep. The Wednesday meetings have always been open. For a while they weren't having meetings, but since they've started having meetings again, they have to be public. So yeah, they're public meetings.
Sheriff, what can you tell us about your replacement when you retire? Do you have an idea of who it might be?
I had a really good idea. My undersheriff, who is a local raised guy from North County, Drain, thinks much like I do, very conservative-minded guy. Got a little bit of a smart mouth on him, but he's a really good guy. He was who I had really figured would step up and run when I'm done. I may have ruined him somewhat because he's been my undersheriff now for about 6 years, and he's been real close to the fire a number of times, so to speak. And I think he's seen what it means to be sheriff, and I don't think he wants really any part of it anymore. And that's okay. That's okay. I'd rather him recognize that and not want to pursue the office of sheriff than to recognize it and just figure, well, I can struggle my way through it and I'll be all right. And he's shared that with me, and he's apologized to me because he says, I know you thought that I'd probably be the guy that would replace you when you're done. He says, but we've done a good job of bringing some other administrative level people into position. And the one in particular that comes to mind is my special services lieutenant, who is also my PIO, that I know you all have seen probably on Facebook and on the news a lot, and that's Brad Odell, another local homegrown boy from Glide. And again, he's a very conservative, common sense thinking individual, and I think he would make a great sheriff someday. And so my goal between now and whenever I decide to retire is to kind of bring him along and make, in fact, I was going to bring him here tonight, but I got to be careful about appearing like I'm campaigning or helping somebody campaign while he's on duty. And
well, maybe next question then will be inappropriate, but how can we build a relationship with him?
Brad's a very open guy. I mean, you can call him and ask to talk to him like you have me, and I know he'll be more than willing to sit down and talk with you. Brad's a very approachable guy. I think most of you have seen him on the news and seen him, like I said, during the fires, he was the guy that was always, turning his phone on and giving an update and a report on the progress of the fire. And again, he's like me. He really is concerned about this community, cares about it, and cares about the sheriff's office and wants to see it continue to progress and head in the direction that we're headed now.
So are you taking any specific steps to leave your replacement so that he leads with the same convictions as you?
Yeah, all my command staff actually attends, not every time, but at different times I invite different members of my command staff to attend the Oregon State Sheriff's Association conferences. And I've sent all of my command staff one at a time to Sheriff's Academy that is put on by the 36 sheriff's offices around the state. They hold it every year, and the purpose is to train up-and-coming sheriff's employees on what it means to be a sheriff and the constitutionality of the office of sheriff. And so, yeah, he's been through that academy. And we'll continue to put people through it because I firmly believe a sheriff's office is different than a police department. This is something I always tell people when they're testing to come to work for me. I always tell them, you know, we go to calls all the time where there's a sheriff's deputy, a state trooper, maybe a Roseburg police officer or a Winston, you know, a municipal police officer. And 9 times out of 10, the people that are needing the police will come up to the guy wearing brown, will come up to the deputy and want to talk to the deputy. It's bizarre. It's weird how that happens, but it really does happen that way. And a number of people that I've talked to here just recently, you know, when I brought that up, they say, well, that's because you guys are so much more approachable than police officers are. And that made me feel kind of good because that's important to me. And I let my people know that all the time, that we are here because of the people. We serve the people. I want a servant attitude out of every one of my employees.
Thank you, John. Okay, going back to drugs. Fentanyl and cocaine are running rampant. What efforts to fight fentanyl from coming in? Most of these drugs are getting laced. I think this came in after the question. We already covered this, right? No, we haven't covered this yet?
Not specifically.
Not specifically fentanyl.
But I mean, again, so fentanyl is the new drug for heroin addicts. It's coming from Mexico, like most all the street drugs are. And we're seeing so much of it because, like I said before, it's not a crime anymore to be in possession of it. It's still a crime to be in possession of dealer quantities of it, but for the user, you know, you can possess 3 or 4 pills of, you know, of the drug, or several grams of heroin or cocaine or methamphetamine, and you're not going to go to jail. It's not an arrestable offense. So again, those changes need to happen at our state legislature and make those laws, or make those possession limits, eliminate them.
Does that have to be like another voting initiative? Because the voters put that in there. They said yes. So do we have to undo it through the vote then?
I think it would, yes. Yep.
Gotta have another ballot measure.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is the jail functioning at full capacity? Multiple officers have dealt with rearrests due to people being let out due to capacity issues.
That's a good question. So the jail, we have a 284 bed facility, the county jail. During COVID, in an attempt to keep the spread of COVID from running through the facility and have somebody get really sick and die, or you know, have to go to the hospital, we were just trying to prevent the liability on the county. So we reduced the population to about 100, and at one point we were down as low as 120 at the height of the spike of COVID. We're currently up around 160. We just recently, you know, basically reopened the jail, took away all the restrictions that we had on it, in an attempt to get it back open so that we don't see this problem of people getting cited for a crime because the jail doesn't have room, and then they get cited again for a similar crime 20 minutes later, and so on and so forth. We've got to get the jail completely opened up and give, you know, people a place for their time out. and we are getting there, but you know, we've continued to wean away from the whole COVID restriction stuff. I think the last week we were doing 3-day quarantines, and I think just now today we eliminated that, and there's no more quarantine time unless we know they're infected.
So when they get new restrictions imposed, are you going to go back to, you know, lower capacity in the jail again, or do you think you'll just stay open like the rest of us?
Well, I'd like to say no, we're not going to go back. Initially, I didn't want to reduce the population of the jail in the first place, and we didn't for a while. But the Oregon State Sheriff's Association All the sheriffs got together and we all decided that we need to all move in unison and we need to all do the same thing. Otherwise, we're potentially hanging, one or two sheriffs out to dry with liability. And so we kind of decided we would all move at the same pace and do the same, the same restrictions. There's a lot of sheriffs that are like me, where they're fed up and had enough of COVID, and it seems like even with all the precautions that we took to try to prevent COVID from getting into the facility, we got it anyway, and our employees got it, and nobody died. And I know that people have died from COVID, but we were fortunate that we didn't have anybody in our facility that got really sick. So I can't answer that at this point. I guess it depends on what the COVID numbers do, and if the next strain is, no worse than the common cold, then no, I'm not interested in playing the governor's games anymore.
A couple more questions? Yeah. How is the apprehension of illegal aliens handled? Are they deported? Do you have a problem here?
So I was sued a year and a half ago for cooperating with immigration. We had an inmate, female inmate, that was an illegal. She had been, this was her second or third trip into the United States. She'd been taken back to Mexico a couple of times prior. She comes back into the facility on a fairly chippy little warrant, misdemeanor warrant. She was scheduled to be released on the warrant because she'd done her time, or I'm not exactly sure what the specifics were, but she was scheduled to be released. I had a corrections deputy call immigration in Eugene and say, hey, we've got a gal in here that's about to be released in an hour. But she's an illegal, and you guys have an immigration hold on her. And so my deputy said, I'll drag my feet on the release process so that you can get down here and get her on this immigration hold, because we can't hold her on the immigration hold. So immigration came down and got her. It was like an hour and 45 minutes. And she ended up hiring an attorney, and I got sued for cooperating with immigration and violating her civil rights. So we have to be very careful how we deal with illegals. The law says that sheriffs can't even call immigration now and give them a heads up. It's federal law. Federal law. I'm sorry? The point of the hold is that a federal agent has the authority to hold them. But a local county sheriff can't hold them for the federal agency. That's my question. That's my question. How effective is law enforcement if we can't communicate with one another?
Can citizens call the federal agency?
Yeah, citizens.
So if it just happened to leak out,
No, but they get arrested as public information. A citizen can go find that out because it's public information.
that if you could notify a citizen
The-
that there was some information they could
The only problem is I think the fact that they're an illegal immigrant is protected. Believe it or not. Yeah. Yeah.
Got some ladies looking for action. Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, have you or will you accept any federally linked gifts for your department?
Gifts. I'm not sure what. Huh?
It's in quotes.
No.
Good answer.
I won't, we won't accept gifts. Period. We have accepted donations, but I don't consider them gifts because they bite. We've received donations for the purchase of our canines, our patrol dogs, from people in the community that want to, help the community and catch bad guys. And that's the beautiful thing about patrol dogs is they catch bad guys. Well, there's all kinds of federal grants available, and the county applies for and gets federal grants all the time. I don't have any interest in any grant money that has strings attached or strings that I would consider, could have a negative impact on our duty and on our function. So for example, we a few years ago had an opportunity to apply for an armored vehicle, and this was on the heels of Umpqua Community College, and we recognized that had the shooter in that situation not got hit by one of the officers that returned fire on him, he had access to a cache of guns in the bathroom in the hallway. One of which was a AR-15, a high-powered, semi-automatic firearm. He could have done a lot of damage. And had we pulled in there and engaged in a firefight with him, a prolonged firefight, it could have been really ugly, and we would have had to stay back because he would have had a long gun. So we had an opportunity to apply for an armored vehicle, and I said, yes, let's do it. Not because I want an armored vehicle to go bust through gates and serve search warrants and do that kind of nonsense, but I wanted something that I felt confident that my people would be safe when I needed to send them in to an active shooter or to a mad husband that's just shot his wife and wants to die by suicide by cop. I wanted the ability to get in close with some protection. So we applied for the grant for this armored vehicle, and we got it. And I caught a lot of grief over that for a while because people thought we were trying to turn our local sheriff's office into a military agency, and that isn't the reason I got it. In fact, I made sure that when we got it, we changed the color of it, and we put on it rescue vehicle, which is what it is. It's a rescue vehicle. We have to go in to get somebody out of someplace, and we're taking fire. We can get in much closer and safer with an armored vehicle. So to kind of answer your question, there are no strings attached with it. We told them what we needed it for, what we wanted to use it for, and there's nothing more to it. We were awarded the opportunity to receive the thing. All we had to do was pay for shipping to get it here from the Midwest somewhere off a military base, and we had it shipped here, and it's ours, and we don't have to answer to the military or to the federal government or anybody.
Thank you, Sylvia. Can you speak a little bit to, which we've discussed before, but can you talk a little bit more about what it means that we're a constitutional county, if we are one, or if we're not, if we can become one? And like some cities seem to be able to declare themselves sanctuary cities. And also, what are your feelings about becoming a sovereign state?
So I'm not exactly sure that this constitutional county thing has been kind of the buzzword for the last year or two. And some of it is connected to the fact that there's an ex-sheriff from Arizona. His name's Richard Mack. Maybe you remember him. He fought the Brady Bill. He sued the government as a result of the Brady Bill and won and got that reversed. And that's kind of where he got his notoriety, was from that. He was a 1 or 2 term sheriff in a little itty bitty county down in northern Arizona or eastern Arizona. And he has gone around and formed this organization called the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Organization, or CSPOA, I think it is. And I have attended, I've listened to him talk. He was up in Grants Pass several years ago and did a presentation down there. And I agree with a lot of what he has to say, but I disagree with some of it as well. But more importantly, I felt like he's using his notoriety to sell books. He's an author of a couple of books. And it became glaringly obvious that that was more important to him than making people aware of their constitutional rights. And so, you know, he's trying to get sheriffs all across the country to join this CSPOA group, and therefore they can claim they're a constitutional sheriff. Well, I say baloney. I'm a constitutional sheriff, and I'm not ever going to join his group. And in fact, I just came from the Western State Sheriff's Conference in Reno, and this is almost every state west of the Mississippi is a member of this organization. And I can tell you, there's a lot of really conservative sheriffs in that group. I mean, we're talking sheriffs from Utah and Texas and Arizona and Idaho. And I mean, I've talked to dozens of them, and not a one of them want anything to do with Sheriff Mack's CSPOA organization. So I feel like I'm accurate in my understanding of Sheriff Mack. Again, I'm not trying to downplay him or badmouth him, but I just feel like he's in it for the wrong reason.
We just got another question. It says, have you seen or experienced a judge's decision that was unconstitutional in this county? Yes or no?
A decision that was unconstitutional?
Yes, a judge's decision that was unconstitutional.
Not off the top of my head. I'm not aware.
Okay, wonderful.
I mean,
So,
can somebody, I mean, does somebody else know of one? Or some?
no? Well, and I think to conclude this talk, John, I think at the end of the day, you know, the reason why we wanted to have you here, and the question in a lot of our minds is, you know, if stuff does hit the fan, we want protection, and at this point in time, unfortunately, not only from criminals, but from our government. And we wanted to know where you stood and your department stood if it came down to that. You know, we want to know that if the state comes and starts pulling kids out of our houses, we'll be protected, you know, things like that.
Yeah, so if any of that kind of unconstitutional acts were to start, I can tell you that without this, and when this comes off, I'm no different than the rest of you, and my deputies are of the same mindset, and they're most, if not all of them, are, you know, raising families and feel the same way, and our constitutional rights and standing up to a tyrannical government, if that's what we're talking about, means standing up against them, then I guarantee you that they will follow my lead, and that's exactly what we'll do.
And when Brett Odell, if he does take over after you, he will feel the same way, and he will follow in the footsteps.
I am absolutely convinced he would. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
Would you say that pretty much those outlying departments, because I know that Chris has said kind of similar things, like, you know, if they come to take the guns or if they come to do this, you know, Myrtle Creek's not going to would you say that's pretty much the same?
Yeah,
dealing
so
with all of the,
that's. I'm glad you brought that
I
up
don't know
because it
about
sounds
Roseburg.
like I'm standing out
no.
against all the PDs, and I firmly believe even Roseburg PD. I think in the event of some tragic situation like you're talking about, or the government, trying to Nazi stomp in here and take over things. Our local police are pretty much all the same. When I was talking earlier about Gary, about the chief, and going over and kind of playing the part against Casey's restaurant, I know that he really regrets doing that, and he realizes that that was a huge mistake, and that isn't really the way he feels. And I know, the Myrtle Creek officers and Sutherland, we're all pretty like-minded. And, we love this county, and we love the citizens in this county, and we're going to do the right thing if we have to when the time comes.
So I wanted to say to your comment about what are they doing about the cartels. I don't know if you went, but I think the Dent guys went. The Douglas County Livestock Association has the Stockman's breakfast once a month, and I know that a group of them, and I believe even maybe one of the commissioners, maybe visited with the local livestock ag guys and talked about specifically the cartel issue. So, I think there is an effort to get the word out to people that they are working on things. At the same time, you probably don't want to just give the cartel your strategy plan and all of that. But But anyways.
So I know you're concerned, and the people in Tiller are concerned, and I promise you that this is not something we're just ignoring. And Abby's absolutely right. I've met with the Cattlemen's Association a couple of times. The drug team commander, Rick MacArthur, has met with them at least 2 or 3 times, and Commissioner Freeman was involved, I know, in 1 or 2 of those conversations. And they're very concerned, like you folks are, and we are taking it very, very seriously. I was actually quite surprised and blown away when the commissioners said, we want you to take this head on, and we're going to give you $1.5 million to get it going. That to me says a lot, that they're serious about this. And so part of what you're going to see in the next year, I didn't think about this in time, but one of the things that we want to be able to do is make sure that landowners know that these cartel groups are coming, and they make it very enticing, very appealing to lease your land to them, because you can make a lot of money in a short amount of time and play dumb. But it's not worth it. Trust me, we're gonna convince people it's not worth it, and we're gonna put the message out to every landowner through our tax assessor that if you're approached and asked, if you'll lease your land and the deal sounds too good to be true, it's because it is, and you could risk the chance of having your land seized. And I don't want it. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go in and take over my fellow citizens' property. We want to just stop the cartel. And I think, part of being responsible in doing that is the landowners have to be responsible as well.
You guys should encourage the citizens to report anything that they might know in regard to illegal growth.
Yeah. But it's scary. I mean, the cartel, they're not to be reckoned with.
We found a dead guy beside the road on the way down from
Right.
Tiller.
I do, right. And so the cartel, they're one of the best businesses in the world. They know how to do business, and they start off very nice. They understand being nice and professional at first, until they don't get what they want. Then they're going to get a little bit intimidating.
Just watch Ozarks. You guys will figure it all out.
Yeah, and then when a little bit intimidating doesn't work, they're going to get downright intimidating and threatening. And so, yeah.
I think that if there's any more, I would like everybody to have a chance to ask your questions, and maybe John might be able to hang around for a few minutes. But we do have the canvassing group of people, a lot of them from Elkton, who have a drive. So I would like to try to get this part wrapped up so the canvassing group can get going, and then maybe, John, if you have a couple other questions that you can answer. We have a ton of room around here. I do want to make two comments to his points, though. His hands, to an extent, in some cases, are tied by these laws that the people have voted to approve. So this all goes back to getting people registered to vote, getting people out to vote, and paying attention to what's on the ballots, because people in Oregon approved a law to basically make drugs legal in Oregon, which then now we have the I-5 corridor full of homeless people. I mean, it's a trickle-down effect, and that's where the change has to happen. So a lot of these problems that they have, I mean, I hear the same thing from my husband, who works in Myrtle Creek. A lot of these problems are being made at the state level with the legislature and the governor and those things. So we have to get a new governor in. We have to watch out for our representatives and those that are elected, and watch those things going through, those bills that are being passed and what's on the ballot. So that's important. Another thing is our commissioners have also noted that, I know this sounds crazy, but we're the quieter voice that are contacting their office. So like, specifically say for COVID stuff, right? We feel like, you know, we went in there and made kind of an impression. We met with some of the commissioners a couple times. By far and away, I was told we were the minority voice. So, you know, it's probably the kind of people who don't want to. Yeah, because empty can rattles. Yes, squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So we're going to have to start, you know, vocalizing and like telling the commissioners when they're doing a good job. If we think there's an issue, we need to let them know. We need to go to those meetings. We need to drop by, call them, those sorts of things. So start, you know, making some noise in a common sense. Yes, again, we've said we need a group of people who are willing to attend regularly. So on Wednesdays at 9. Wednesdays at 9. Wednesdays at 9 in the morning. Yeah. So anyways, okay, so basically to wrap things up, so Jeff usually says that this is the Journey Church building. We're not necessarily expecting everybody here to be the body of the Journey Church. But also, I know that we've been referred to as radicals and extremists and terrorists. Thanks, Abby. Our group has specifically. And also myself, yes. But what I would like to point out to all of you is that I believe that what we are is we are the salt. The other church that I actually go to. We just had a service about salt Sunday. And what salt basically prevents decay and blocks bitterness, right? But it's flavored, uses flavoring, seasoned around people. So I believe that this group, those that watch, participate, we are the salt in the community. So we need to get out there and flavor it up and prevent the decay, block the bitterness, and get people. Team America. Anyways, thanks, John, for coming.
Agreed.
Let's go to canvassing, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question for you. We moved here from Iowa, my son and I. Well, I've been here about a year. Both have some children and that's from other states. So what do we have to do to get one here in Douglas County? After